Nightmare, also known as Nightmare and a Damaged Brain, is a real doozy of a slasher film released in 1981. This is one of the worst, most amateurish, cheapest films I've seen in a while, but it's also one of the most raw, unnerving, terrifying, and grisly films I can think of. I hate this movie, but I love it. It won't leave my mind. I can't tell if it's trash or one of the most underrated slasher films of the 80s. Maybe it's both. Welcome to the HellBound Horror Show. Nightmare has one of the most convoluted histories behind it that helps cement its legacy. It's a brutal film, and I mean brutal. It's a strange blend of exploitation and slasher, and maybe not in a good way. This movie has two things in spades, and that's sex and blood. The sex isn't healthy sex either. It's a lot of strip clubs and aggressive sex. It's not rape, but anytime that there's a sexual theme, it cuts to violence. It's degrading and abusive to women, and it's just downright uncomfortable. Then you realize that Romano Scavolini, the director, made his career directing hardcore pornography. And all of a sudden, it makes sense. Now for the blood, and oh boy, is there blood. This is one of the famous video nasties from the UK. The UK wanted to trim one full second of violent footage, but the distributor refused. The distributor then was sentenced to jail for 18 months for not changing the film. No joke. That's crazy! A lot of the video nasties usually have pretty bad effects. Not super realistic, just excessive. Nightmare, however, has some pretty outstanding gore. Maybe that's because Tom Savini helped with the gore. Tom Savini is a gore expert and was on fire in 1981 doing effects for The Burning, The Prowler, and Eyes of a Stranger. He was not the lead gore effects artist on the film, and if you ask him, he'll probably deny working on the film at all. But that's all bull malarkey. There's photo evidence of him working on one of the most violent pieces in the film. He may not have had a huge involvement, but he was there on at least one of the days of shooting. Some theorize that Savini denies the project due to financial disputes, and that all makes sense. We know there's a lot of sex and blood, but what else is there? Well, that's a good question, and we should figure it out together by looking at the plot. Nightmare opens on George, who is a mental patient at an institution. He's a borderline schizophrenic with sexual misconduct charges. The mental institution is doing highly experimental drug tests on George, and we see some of his trips while he's in the hospital. It's all violence against women. Right away, we see how unstable George is, and it honestly reminds me a ton of Maniac from 1980, which is another film Tom Savini worked on. Both are gritty and have a lead character that audiences will most likely hate. Both have mentally unstable characters who have issues involving sex. George has visions of a child witnessing a sexual act, and then blood, violence.
Now think, George. Are you looking at a child? Or are you the child?
That's a little on the nose there, isn't it, Doc? The doctors believe they finally found the right medication for George, and they let him out into the real world. While the doctors pat themselves on the back for curing George of his sexual thoughts, George goes to a strip club. Good work, Doc. You can just tell George isn't doing well as he walks into the strip club. As he sees the ladies, he has small flashbacks to violent acts. We see that anytime George is a witness to a female body, he goes utterly insane. He foams at the mouth and has violent flashbacks. It's extremely disturbing and unsettling. Now, it's not uncommon for horror movies to cut between lovemaking and violence. A lot of the times the juxtaposition can be jarring and used to great effect. But here it's different. Normally, the sex is between two lovers or something happy. Here, the sex is hollow and empty, and then it cuts to violence. It may seem like a small change to some, but to me, it really messes with me. After that, we're introduced to this family. It's a mother raising 3 kids on her own. She's trying to date and to put herself out there, but her youngest boy is a total piece of... he's a piece of work. CJ, the little boy, is constantly messing with people, but you do feel for the little brat. CJ picks up a phone call with no answer. It's George on the other end. And just like that, you know their 2 worlds are gonna collide. George travels from New York down to Florida, and along his way, he begins to murder. The doctors, of course, can't find George, so now they have to figure out where he went, or their butts and careers are toast. Little CJ takes out the trash, and we see that George had no problem making it to Florida. We're only a half an hour into this movie, so I'm sure not too much can happen. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, they can't. Oh my gosh, they're going to kill this kid. What kind of sick movie is this? This is messed up.
CJ, it's ketchup.
Oh, that little piece of work. This movie couldn't kill a kid. That'd be way too messed up. I'm glad they didn't go there. Oh wait, they do kill a kid. Little CJ's friend. And of course, because CJ is a piece of work, the cops think he killed his friend. Sure, CJ is the prime suspect of the murder case, but no cop is gonna show a corpse of a child to a 7-year-old boy. Now that's just messed up. I don't care how real or gross the gore is, that is way more traumatizing to a child. As you can imagine, the final 20 minutes of the film ends in a showdown between George and the family, and that's the best part of the film. This is when the movie actually gains some decent pacing and feels like a true slasher film. George even wears a terrifying mask. That mask alone can give someone nightmares. I don't want to spoil the good parts of the ending, but the very end of the film has little CJ in a cop car after a terrible night. We, as the audience, think it's going to be a nice subtle way of saying the innocent can't stay innocent forever, and that one day we all grow up into corrupt adults. That's a nice underlying message that not everyone would get. But then CJ smiles and winks to the camera. Now that's just a little bit too much on the nose. Anyways, Nightmare. What else can I say? The acting is bad, the directing is amateurish, it's cheap, the story is poorly written and barely executed, most of the characters are flat, and the whole thing reeks of trash. But it's a convincing look into a psychopath. Things don't always have to line up 100%. The pacing feels like we are perceiving time from George's perspective, and that's brilliant. It makes you uneasy. It doesn't always follow the genre norms. We literally follow the killer for the first half of the movie. We aren't introduced to any other character that you could remotely call a lead. It's unpredictable in that regard. The film doesn't try to make George a sympathetic character either, nor does it try to make him redeemable. It just tries to make him a real character. He feels human, just extremely troubled. Like I said earlier, it reminds me of Maniac from 1980 and even Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer from 1986. The ending is a lot more palatable and falls more into your typical slasher tropes. To me, that's a good thing. It ends the way you think it should end. It's a solid slasher for the last 20 minutes or so. It becomes a film of 2 halves. You have the messed up, exploitation-heavy beginning, and then you have the stereotypical slasher ending. It makes for an interesting film, that's for sure. It's polarizing, but I think I love it. It's not always an easy watch, both for the general lack of polish as well as the horrifying elements. But the film does have substance. It tries to make you feel something, even if it doesn't always succeed at it. It's an attempt, and a fair attempt at that, and for that, I give it praise. The film has obvious flaws, but it tries to be different. It's no masterpiece, but it is a memorable slasher that's totally worth a watch. And that's all I have for tonight. So as always, thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy, stay safe, and take care, everyone.